Thank you for joining me. My name is Gina Covarrubias. I'm an engineering life coach, and I will explain a little bit more about who I am and what I do here in a moment. My coaching business is called Deliberate Doing, and the purpose of my business is to help engineers and other STEM professionals defeat career despair, whether that despair may be in the form of indecision or frustration or not knowing what the next step is. That's where I come into play, and I help you solve those problems. Let's take a look at tonight's outline. The title is Career Purpose, Why Your Approach to Work Isn't Working. And the whole reason I chose that title is because too often, many of us will go to work and strive to attain certain tangibles, such as titles, we want money, we want benefits, we want to save for retirement, and sometimes these external things become the whole focus of our careers. And what I want to do tonight is to give you a completely different perspective and to let you know that if you're focusing on certain external destinations, like what I just said, then you may be missing the whole profound reason we work in the first place, and that could lead you to unhappiness. So in the italicized words here, what I put is reward is found in the journey, not the destination. And that is the whole theme behind my presentation tonight. I'm going to teach you how the reward actually is really found in the journey, not in one single destination. So after a quick introduction, I'm going to talk to you about a concept called career attachment. And as you could probably guess, that's when we become emotionally attached to our careers. And I'm going to teach you some self-awareness tools after that in section 3. And that will lead us right into section 4, which is talking about your career purpose. Why do you go to work in the first place? And I'll wrap it up with a great conclusion at the end. So let's get started with the introduction. I have an aerospace engineering degree from Purdue. I also have a master's degree in mechanical engineering. And so I worked in the aerospace industry for about 12 years, maybe a little bit more. I also had the pleasure of being a academic advisor in an engineering and technology department, again at Purdue. And over the course of my years, I really struggled finding what I would call my dream job. I didn't really know where I fit in, and I kind of always felt like a fish out of water, and I didn't know why. So about 10 years ago, I was really in a bad mental place, and I think my career stress got to me and my health just kind of tanked, and I was out of work for several months trying to recover from whatever, all these things that were going on. So anyway, fast forward a few years later, when I started working again and I recovered and I started feeling better, I told myself I really wanted to do some self-reflection, and I really wanted to understand what my purpose in life is. And I really wanted to use my strengths somehow, and I didn't know what that looked like. What ended up happening is I created Deliberate Doing, which is my coaching business, and that's why I'm standing here talking to you tonight. As I mentioned, I'm a life coach for STEM professionals, and I help professionals when they are struggling with disappointment or confusion in their careers, or simply maybe they're okay with where they are, but they want something greater. So I help them create that for themselves. And I also solve the very common problem, what do I do next with my life? How many people have said that to you? How many people have you said that to? What am I supposed to do next? How do I figure that out? I'd like to give you a very brief introduction to life coaching because that is important for the rest of the presentation tonight. There are 2 ways that we humans experience the world around us, our surroundings. Number 1 is through sensations. The sensation will start on the body or inside the body, travels up to the brain, and the brain processes it. That's not what life coaching is about. Life coaching is about the second way that we experience the surroundings around us. And that is through our perceptions or our interpretations. What happens is we're constantly being bombarded by stimuli around us. We've got all these external things going on, and part of the brain's job is to process all of that and filter through it. And it offers you thoughts and beliefs. So what life coaching does is it forces you to focus on your perceptions and your beliefs. And it forces you to try to answer the question, why do I believe the things I believe? And it really helps you put your life in perspective. So it gets you out of your own bubble, gets you out of your own head. Life coaching teaches mental well-being. You could think of me as a personal trainer for the mind. Let's move on to section 2, and we're going to talk about something really important and near and dear to me because I experienced career attachment myself. And what I want to say about career attachment is that as a STEM professional, a lot of us are really proud of our jobs or our titles. We worked really hard to get where we are. And a lot of us leave college with really high expectations, high aspirations. And we think that there is a really good life coming our way. At least that's what we hope, because after all, we worked really hard to get there. And I don't know about you, but I graduated with a lot of student loans when I started my career as a young professional. So I almost felt a little bit of entitlement, almost as if I was owed something really great because I worked so hard to complete that degree. So we start our careers, and what happens is you want to nurture your career. Obviously, you want it to develop and you want to nourish it. And over time, you see this career start growing and growing. And you identify yourself with this baby, I'm going to refer to it as a baby, that starts growing over time. But the problem is that it's not a baby. And what you're doing is you're starting to foster this emotional attachment to your job, which is an external thing. And that can be a real problem because the quality of your life starts depending on the outcomes of this external job. And jobs are external because they're outside of you. You don't have any control over the job itself. What happens is you start riding this emotional roller coaster, which means when the job is going great and you have a good team and you like your boss and you like what you're doing, then the rest of your life seems really great. But at the same time, as soon as the job tanks, or as soon as you're moved to a different department or you have a different team and things start going sour, then you bring that home with you into your personal life, and then the rest of your life just seems to be miserable because of the outcomes due to your job. That's what I refer to as career attachment. And we don't want to put ourselves in that position because career attachment means you're depending on your job to feel good. You're depending on your job to feel better. You're depending on that raise or on that promotion or on getting that next job, whatever it may be, in order for you to feel good or to feel better. And my message to you is don't depend on externals, even the job. You can feel good about you despite what's going on in all the surroundings. Now, some examples of career attachment I've listed here. If you have said to yourself, I better not say no to the boss, I have to do what they say or else. Or if you have said to yourself at one point in time, I really hope they like me, I really hope they hire me, or I need this job. That's something very common I've heard, especially throughout COVID. I need this job, I have to do what it takes to keep it. Or I deserve a promotion. I worked my butt off and I deserve this or that. And then the last one, well, I should work here because they provide great benefits. I really like the benefits. So these are some examples of ways that you might be attached to your own career. And certainly there are many other examples I could have listed. Since you identify with your career, it's easy to fool yourself, and it's easy to say, well, I worked really hard to get here and I deserve A, B, and C. And so what I want you to understand is that there are real consequences to that emotional attachment to your career. When you have expectations of your career and they're not met, your emotional roller coaster will not be a fun one to ride. So as an example, lack of sleep, less time with the family, hopping from job to job, going to work with resentment because you don't like who you're working with or what you're doing, questioning yourself, doubting yourself. Career attachment could lead to burnout and just walking away, or worse, it could lead to depression or some other illness. And so I caution you, don't be like this person here in this picture who is clearly unhappy, not sleeping well, with bags under his eyes, but walking around with his mug that says, I love my job, saying good morning to everyone. He's just fooling himself. So I want you to be cautious, and I want you to try to recognize, are you attached to your career outcomes? And some of you might say, but I have to focus on my career. It's who I am. And what I'm here to tell you is you are not your job. You are separate from your job. So doing things and producing things is results driven. Being your humanness is thought driven. So get in the habit of differentiating between the two. Differentiate productivity from being human. In other words, differentiate career outcomes from your human emotions. So on the left here, I have a short summary. On the left, I've listed a few things that could lead to a career attachment mindset. And that often occurs in people who blend their jobs with themselves. They kind of think that they're one and the same. It tends to happen in people with lower self-confidence, and it's a very disempowering place to be. It's a disempowering way to live your life. Because once again, as I say in the bottom here in bold, that means your well-being is dependent upon externals that are outside of your control. And we don't want to be in that position. We want to be on the right-hand side of this table, a career purpose mindset. So that means you know how to separate yourself from your job identity. Typically, that requires a lot of self-confidence, and people who can do that have higher self-confidence. It's a very empowering place to be in your life because your well-being depends on your internal beliefs. It depends on what's going on up here, not on the externals that are outside of your control. So the takeaway from this section is that your job description is not self-description. They're very, very different. Now, of course, you chose your job. That was your choice. That was your decision. So your job is a function of your personality. Yes, of course, that's true. But you are not your job. Two very different things. One is external, the other is human. This leads us to a couple of self-awareness tools that I would like to teach you. So these self-awareness tools are very important as you think about how you are attached to your career. And they're very important when it comes to career purpose. All of this is leading up to career purpose. So number one, I want to teach you about a concept called your life curriculum. So imagine yourself sitting in a classroom. It's the first day of class. Your teacher or professor hands you what? They hand you an outline. They hand you a syllabus of the semester. And in this syllabus, it outlines the topics you're going to cover and when you're going to have exams and when the homework is due and all that good stuff. Well, similar to a class, you also have a curriculum that you have to manage in your life. Now, the difference between the classroom curriculum and your life curriculum is that you don't know what's coming your way in life. You're going to have all of these externals that you are going to have to manage in your life. And you don't necessarily know. In fact, most of the time, you're not going to know what they are and when they're going to occur. In this table, I've listed some examples of what make up your life curriculum. And your life curriculum is very unique and special only to you. It's very different from everybody else's life curriculum. So all of us have to deal with other people in our lives. For example, other people say things, other people do things. That's part of our life curriculum. We have no control over those things. A diagnosis and social issues that are going on and things happening in the news and your job and job interviews. COVID is a great example of an external out there. It's part of our life curriculum. We have no control over it. Your past is part of your curriculum, and people dying, people being born, all of these things make up your life curriculum. So your challenge in life is to interpret your curriculum. And your brain does this by assigning meanings, and we call those meanings beliefs. So again, life coaching goes back to helping you understand what are your beliefs. Now, interpreting your surroundings and your life curriculum can get really tricky because, as I mentioned, we assign meanings to these externals that we call beliefs. And we believe that subjective meanings are factual sometimes. And then we live our lives based on meanings that we think are factual, but they're really not. For example, how many of you have said, my future's been ruined, or have heard other people say, my future's been ruined because such and such happened? It's a thought that your brain is offering you, and you think it's true. And the second bullet, the world is so unstable. There's all these things going on and all these issues and the environment and climate and on and on. And you think it's just a fact that the world is unstable. The third bullet, this wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't part of my plan. I tried to avoid this and look what happened. Okay, so these are beliefs, these are thoughts that our brain offers us, and we take them at face value, and then we live our lives believing that these are the truth. And the result is that we cause ourselves unnecessary pain and suffering when that happens. So what I'd like to talk to you about is how to separate your beliefs from the truth, or in other words, how to separate fact from fiction. So on the left, I have listed 4 examples of subjective beliefs that some of us think are really true in the world. Some of us think it's really true that COVID has ruined my future. Some of us think it's true, I'll never find another job. Some of us tell ourselves today was a really bad day at work, and we think it's true. Or we tell ourselves my future looks really unstable because X, Y, and Z happened. And then we live our lives based on these things we're telling ourselves. So on the right-hand side, what I did was I rewrote the subjective narrative as an objective truth. So there are no opinions inserted on the right-hand side. So number 1, instead of telling yourself COVID has ruined your future, perhaps you could tell yourself COVID has changed my future. Instead of telling yourself I'll never find another job, you could tell yourself it's just a matter of time. It might take longer, I might have to work harder, but it's just a matter of time. Instead of dwelling on the horrible day you had at work, you could tell yourself it was another human day today. It was a human day. That's what it was. Instead of telling yourself the future looks unstable, to be honest, the future is always unknown. You could plan all you want. The future is always unknown until you get there. What I want to try to get you to understand is to separate the facts from the fiction before you decide what to believe and how to respond to your externals. It's a great self-awareness tool. Number 2, I want to teach you about the STEAR energetic framework. If you take a look at this picture is telling you thoughts create your feelings, feelings create your behaviors, and your behaviors just reinforce what was going on up here in your brain. This is basic cognitive science. And the STEAR energetic framework just takes it one step further. So the S in STEAR stands for situations. Those are your externals. Those are your life curriculum that we just talked about. And what happens is your externals lead your brain to filter information or to think thoughts. Those thoughts drive the energy inside of you, or emotions. Based on that energy, you're going to take action, or you're going to take certain behaviors. And at the end of the day, you create your reality based on those actions and behaviors. That's exactly how this energetic framework works. So the takeaway is that your thoughts and your beliefs are really important because they propagate your reality. In the next 2 slides, I'm going to demonstrate how this energetic framework plays out in our lives. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer the same situation, but 2 different thoughts. And I'm going to show you how the reality can be very different, even though the situation is the same. The situation is your current job. And you could have many, many different thoughts about your job, many different ways to interpret it, okay? Here's an example. I did not go to engineering school for this. My work is not meaningful to me. Okay, if that's one of the thoughts or beliefs that you have about your current job, the energy it's going to generate for you is probably going to feel depleted. You're probably going to feel obligated. You might feel resentful. You might feel like your job is forced. And based on this negative energy, these are some of the actions that you might do. You might ruminate on the things that you would like to do. You might go out and job search. You might go home and complain to your friends and family, or complain at work. You may focus on all the things that are wrong with your job. You may just show up and go through the motions at work. And you may just live by default. You may just show up and take up space and do the minimum. Those could be some of the actions or behaviors you would engage in from the energy of feeling depleted and obligated. The reality here is that you're searching for meaning, you're searching for happiness from something that's external. You think that your job, which is external to you, should provide happiness and fulfillment, and that it should meet certain expectations that you have. So what you're doing is you're looking outside of yourself for meaning and happiness in this situation. So what I want you to know is that the energy comes from the thought, I didn't go to school for this, my work is meaningless, or my work is not meaningful. That's the belief that's generating this energy inside of you. It's not the job that's generating the energy, it's your thought. Let's take a look at a different thought. Same situation, same job. You could say to yourself, you know, I'm open to the idea that my output impacts our product and the business objectives. That's a little bit of a different spin, right, than the last thought. That sort of energy may feel neutral to you. It might even feel flexible to you. It might even feel resilient to you. From that space, from that energy, the actions you might take, well, your efforts could be deliberate and intentional at work. You could choose to focus on the things that are actually within your control. You could be curious at work. Instead of living by default or just showing up, you could actually explore and be curious and not complain anymore. And the reality is, if you engage in those actions, you're actually fulfilling the role of an employee. That's what an employee is supposed to do. They're supposed to show up and be curious and get the job done. They're not supposed to show up and say, oh, these are all the things wrong with my job, I better find a new one. So this is the STEAR energetic framework in action. Very, very powerful self-awareness tool. The third self-awareness tool I'd like to teach you is about swim lanes, and perhaps you may have heard about swim lanes. There are 3 swim lanes, and 2 of them are here on this slide. The world has its own swim lane, and that includes all the externals out there, your life curriculum and all the situations and all the people at work and all the things that go on at work. And the weather, okay, that's external situation that falls under the world's swim lane. Now, other people in section B also have their own swim lanes. That means other people get to do the things they want to do. They get to say what they want to say. They get to live their lives however they want to live their lives. They get to vote however they want to vote. And other people's swim lanes are not part of your business. Sections A and B, the world's swim lanes and other people's swim lanes, you don't have control over those. So we don't want to focus on those lanes. We want to focus on your own lane. That's where you have the most impact, and that's the lane you can control in life. You get to make the most impact when you focus in your own lane because you get to control what's happening. You're going to use your skill set. You're going to use your own approaches. You're going to use your own willingness to tackle what's ever going on in your swim lane. You get to be more efficient when you stay in your swim lane. It's going to make you more empowered, more productive, less dramatic. It'll cause a lot less drama in your life. You're going to be more self-aware, and you're going to be more accountable to yourself when you choose to stay inside your swim lane. The takeaway here is that the more you try to control the things that are outside of your control, like those externals, the more out of control you're going to feel. Therefore, my suggestion is to stay in your swim lane, focus on the things you can control. And what I'm here to tell you is that you can always control what you believe. You may not be able to control the circumstances and the externals around you, but you can always control the way you choose to respond. Very powerful. That leads us to talking about your career purpose. As I mentioned in the beginning, our career purpose is not found in external destinations like money and titles and retirement and all that other stuff that sometimes we find ourselves chasing. Rather, career purpose is a constant journey, and it involves these three pillars: service, development, and legacy. And I'm going to talk about those. Let's start with service. If you could imagine yourself going into work every day with a service mindset, meaning, how can I contribute? A service mindset means you're going to contribute towards something greater than you, because as a collective, people make profound impacts as opposed to working solo. And I'm not saying it's not okay to work solo. Of course, it's okay to work solo. But I'm trying to get you to think in terms of, how can I go to work and serve other people? How can I serve the business? How can I improve those around me? So in this table, I listed a couple of examples, very simple examples of thoughts that you might think on the left-hand side, which would be outside your lane, and what it looks like to stay inside your lane from a service perspective. So on the left, instead of asking yourself, what am I getting out of doing this project? What am I getting out of being here? Ask yourself, what can I put into this? Instead of telling yourself other people are not pulling their weight, ask yourself, how can I help other people succeed? Instead of telling yourself, this is not part of my job, ask yourself, where can I add value for the sake of adding value? Instead of telling yourself, how much of a raise am I going to get? I wonder how big it's going to be. Tell yourself, I wonder how I can raise my own standards while I'm here. So the takeaway here is to try to approach your job and your work from an attitude of service from your own lane. In other words, what can I do to improve? How can I help those around me? How can I help the business? Number two, the second pillar of your career purpose involves development. Development is all about progressing your skills and building upon what you've already created. You've got a great foundation, but you've got a long way to go. So use your work as a platform to develop yourself. You're going to use it to unravel your weaknesses too. We all have weaknesses and we all have insecurities, and that's okay. Development includes evolving your brain, pushing it to the next level, enhancing your self-awareness at work. So the takeaway here is to try to practice being curious and exploring. Instead of just being diligent, on the left-hand side of this table, such as, I'll just do it the way they told me to do it. Maybe you could ask, why are we doing it this way? Maybe you could take that to your management and actually ask the question. Or instead of telling yourself, I'll just use the standard template because that's what they told me to do, maybe you could go to your management and say, hey, I have a better way of doing this, a much more efficient way. Can I create a new template? Instead of using the outdated procedure or guideline, ask yourself, how might I be able to update these outdated procedures and guidelines? Can I take this to the next level? Instead of saying, I'll wait and see, ask yourself, how can I be more proactive? So these are the types of exercises, these are the types of questions you could ask yourself or thoughts you could think to help yourself develop your skills in the workplace. And I'm not saying it's easy. Self-development includes defeating those obstacles that you don't want to face. It includes overcoming challenges that perhaps you hadn't planned for. Self-development includes rising above all the politics at work and all the favoritism that goes on and all the unfairness and perhaps the nepotism. Those are not easy things to do, but if you could be the bigger person and rise above those types of things, that will develop you. Self-development is also about creative problem solving. So most of us, of course, we love the technical challenges, right? But what about the interpersonal challenges? What about solving the problems between you and your coworkers, or you and management or your customers? And it's also about solving your own personal problems. And that's really what self-development is about. So I pose this question to you at the bottom of the slide. How can you possibly rise above all the difficult people and the customers and all the challenges to perform your best at work, given your resources? Again, not an easy thing to do, but that is a great development attitude to have at work. Self-development requires a lot of emotional maturity and self-awareness. And it's probably going to involve a lot of failing too, which I like to say is a good thing. Don't be afraid to fail. Failing means you tried. And if you fail, you get on your feet and you try again, or you try something different. And that's how we learn. That's self-development right there. The last pillar of your career purpose is all about your legacy. It's about manipulating and understanding what your capabilities actually are. It's about improving everything you come across. Every time you talk to somebody, or you leave a document, or you encounter a stranger, always try to leave something in better shape than you found it. Legacy is about understanding your originality and celebrating it, applying your own specific brand and authenticity. Every single one of us is unique and we have something different to offer. It's up to you to figure out what is unique about you. What does your brand say about you? How can you maximize it? Legacy is about creating unique impacts, using your strengths and your authenticity. It's about leading yourself through work, through your life as a proactive change agent. So the key takeaway about legacy is to always leave your occupation in a turnkey status. That means it's in a great position, it's ready to be handed off to the next person. All you have to do is hand it off and go, and they can pick it up and run with it. Always leave your company in a better framework than when you found it. That is what legacy is all about, improving anything and everything that you come across. And the last thing I'd like to say, and this is the great news about your career purpose, you don't even have to be employed to be able to fulfill your career purpose. One of the most rewarding things we can do in life is volunteer. And I've listed a few ways here that we could engage in volunteering, nonprofits and churches, and taking care of family members and serving on boards, being a mentor or a coach. And this is another thing about filling employment gaps. So often people are very concerned when they have a gap of employment. And oftentimes people want to know, and they ask me, what should I tell my next potential employer when I go to a job interview if I've had this 3-month gap or 12-month gap or whatever it is? What do I tell them? Well, what is your career purpose? Career purpose is to serve, is to develop yourself, and is to create a legacy wherever you go. You can do those things outside of work. And in fact, I highly encourage you to pursue those things outside of work. You don't have to depend on your external job to fulfill service, development, and legacy. So when you do have that job gap and you do go to your next interview and they ask you what you do, you could say, oh, you know what? I took these online courses and I volunteered at this place, and these are the things I learned, and these are the different ways that I grew from that experience. And they're going to say, oh, wow, that's great, right? They can't say no to that. The takeaway here is that when you work without the expectation of a reward, it can be one of the most rewarding journeys in your life. Now, let's summarize what I taught you tonight. I taught you about career attachments to start off with. And what I taught you is that it really is not your job's job to make you happy, because your job is external to you. It's out there. That means you have no control over it. We don't want to have this emotional dependency on things outside of our control. Number 2, I taught you 3 self-awareness tools that you could start using right now. And what I want you to take away from those self-awareness tools is don't believe everything you think. Question all the thoughts that start popping into your brain, and really be deliberate about what you want to believe. And number 3, what I taught you about career purpose is that reward is really found in overcoming all of these obstacles that keep you from knowing how capable you are. That is why we need obstacles and challenges in life. That's why life is not easy. If we're always comfortable, that means we're staying in our little comfy bubble and we're not growing. So comfort equals stagnation. So we want challenges, we want obstacles, we need to fail, because that means growth. What I'd like to do is wrap up tonight with this conclusion. The decisions that you make in your career are much less important than who you become along the journey. So I want you to remember that the decision itself is not nearly as important. How are you growing? How are you evolving? Who are you becoming as you defeat all of these challenges in front of you? And I'd like to leave you with the quote here at the bottom. Life is not about what the future brings to you, but what you bring to it. Last, I would like to say thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate your attention. My website, deliberatedoing.com, offers many free resources. I have a lot of videos on there and a career blog for you to look at. I have an events page where I post upcoming webinars just like this. So I would encourage you to visit my events page often. I always offer free coaching to anybody who is interested. I have a monthly newsletter. And I also created a personal development course to help you create a dream career for yourself if you find yourself struggling or stuck or confused. Having said that, thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing my slides.